Hello, TLT Carlson here, and it's live stream time again. Today we arrive at my 6th and final issue of Star Wars Insider. I did get a few of these magazines, of course, when I was working at Tower Records back in the day. And I never bought any after Tower Records closed down, so we're going to continue this one more time. For next week's live stream, there won't be any more Star Wars Insider magazines, but I do have a few of these Game Informer magazines, so we'll probably look at one of those next week. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. This one's got the residents of Utapau on the cover. Up there you got, Vader Rises, and then the anniversary of Spaceballs, the infamous Mel Brooks film that parodied Star Wars. Wookiee World, Cool Trooper. The back cover has an ad for the Star Wars miniatures game. Inside the front cover, we have an ad for a game called Time Shift. I'm not familiar with this game. There's an ad here for Gen Con. Looks like this is a convention. Table of contents over here. Models of Revenge of the Sith, Aliens of Episode 3. I am still getting over a cold, so if I cough a little bit, please forgive me. Here we have our letters from the editor, and there is a figure here for a character named Gragra, who was only on screen for very little time, but I guess they're doing figures of some of the background characters and things like this. It says he was at Mos Espa, presumably in Episode 1. Only the Good Die Young. Here they've got letters from fans. Like there's something about Sith-themed license plates. Questions about Star Wars to keep you awake at night. Why do Jawa's eyes glow? In the Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader duel in Episode 3, where did Vader's limbs go after Obi-Wan cut them off? I always figured they just burned up because it was a fiery pit. When is someone going to put out a Jedi Sith Apprentice workout video? That's something I'd probably rather not think about, honestly. Yeah, and there's talk about some of the things in between Episodes 3 and 4. Just talk about how Uncle Owen doesn't recognize the droids when he buys them. Even though if you think about it, it's not really a plot hole because those are actually very common droid designs throughout the galaxy, and they never give their names to Owen. And 3PO, of course, had different coverings, and 3PO himself had his memory wiped, so... And of course, R2-D2's not talking. Well, except for in beeps that nobody understands. I wasn't sure if I actually showed that. And there's an ad over here for something called Swords of Evening Star. Looks like that's a fantasy novel series. Star Wars Comic Con. They got to look at some novels, figurines, statues. And then there's an interview here with Dustin Roberts, the Star Wars fan club president. Hey there, says Chris. Hello back. Hope you're doing well. There's a look at this page with the Comic-Con stuff. You feeling better? I actually just addressed this a few seconds ago. I'm still getting over this cold, which hopefully will be gone soon. There's a Star Wars Fan Film Awards section here. I guess these people made their own fan films, and there's actually an awards ceremony commemorating this. How is your weather? My weather here is actually very good. I'm actually looking out an open window right now. There's no wind, and I don't see any clouds in the sky. It actually looks really nice over here right now. Okay. And right here, refresher reading. 20 things you didn't know about the Tantive 4, which is the Corellian Corvette, which is Princess Leia's flagship at the beginning of the original film. On this page, there's an ad for Brian's Toys. They've had ads for a lot of, in a lot of the other magazines. Are you ready for Christmas next week? I think I'm about as ready as I can be. I'm ready for it to be done with so we can get back to our normal scheduled lives. Star Wars Reigns in Spain, a sampling of Star Wars collectibles from the Iberian Peninsula. And then there's an ad for another fantasy novel on the other side, but some pretty cool random Spanish Star Wars collectibles there. Here they got a 30th anniversary thing for the magazine for the original film. And then they got, it looks like these are Clone Wars production art. I don't know if these are like animation cells or what, but those actually look pretty cool. And the no longer canon Tartakovsky Clone Wars series, a lot of those elements later were worked into canon, and some of those voice actors did appear in the canon CG Clone Wars series. Here's another big ad for Brian's Toys, even more stuff this time around. Sculpting history. There's a book inside the Star Wars model shop, and there's a look at some of the model kit stuff and everything they used, like for building the Death Star and the land speeder in the original movie. Yeah, Caught in the Tempest. These are then upcoming books for the Star Wars franchise. I do remember when I worked at Tower Records, they actually sold some of the reference books, and I had the official chronology book they had back then. Yeah, Begin the Dark Times. This looks like some older comics and stuff. Obviously, the comics are no longer canon except for the ones put out since Disney acquired Lucasfilm. Yeah, Kiss tonight. Yeah, I'm going to a Kiss tribute band tonight, so that'll be good. And here we've got more of these statuettes, a lot of different characters. Looks like they mainly focus on Return of the Jedi. Here you got the Rebel Troopers from the Forest Moon. You got Bib Fortuna there, a few other random characters. The models of Revenge of the Sith. Right here you got to look at the Kashyyyk settings from Episode 3. Personally, I thought the Kashyyyk scenes in that movie were kind of pointless. One of the few things about Revenge of the Sith I'm not a huge fan of. They mainly just felt like an excuse to put Chewbacca in the movie. Here's a continuation of the Kashyyyk stuff. Yoda Pagoda. This is the little hut where Yoda was staying on Kashyyyk during his scenes in the movie. Of course, when he's approached during Clone Troopers during Order 66, and decapitates the two of them before they can do their business. Yeah, Aliens of Episode 3, and here we have one of the aliens from Utapau. Yeah, Part 3 is my favorite. Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is a great film. I might do a separate video later on ranking the films, which I'm sure will probably be a point of contention to some, but might be worth doing. Yeah, Utapans, they got more of them on this page. I know sometimes they just call them Powans, so I don't know what the official name is. Here they actually use the full-on Utapan's name, but I know, the Grand Inquisitor from Star Wars Rebels is of this species, and they refer to them as Powan, so I guess they just use a shorter name now. Yeah. Mustafarians, residents of Mustafar, where, of course, Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi have their epic duel at the end of the film. And, of course, later on, Darth Vader has a fortress built that overlooks the lava river of his ultimate defeat, which further adds to his torment. I think Phantom Menace is underrated. There are things about Phantom Menace I like. Interesting piece of trivia that may surprise you. One of the things that film critic Roger Ebert actually praised about the Phantom Menace was Jar Jar Binks. Hard to believe, given that that character is not exactly too well liked. Yeah, Polis Massons. This is the asteroid base where Luke and Leia are born, and where, of course, Padme dies. So these are the folks that run that planet. Yeah, Luke's land speeder. Here's an article on, the Sand Troopers, the land speeder. Mos Eisley, there's some, content here. Yeah, Attack of the Clones is underrated. There's some great moments in that one as well. Spaceballs, the article. Spaceballs, of course, Mel Brooks' big parody of Star Wars. George Lucas gave Mel Brooks permission to make this movie, but there was one stipulation. There couldn't be any merchandise. And of course, Brooks agreed to that, and that's why merchandising is so heavily spoofed in the movie. And then that article continues over here. There's an article for a game called Destroy All Humans, not something that I've played. More on, did you like Rise of Skywalker? Honestly, not a whole lot. To me, Rise of Skywalker felt like it just basically ignored the entire previous film, and it was trying too hard to pander to fans, and it just didn't quite work. I mean, I think bringing Palpatine back was just lazy. I mean, if you brought him back as a Force ghost to influence Kylo Ren, I could have gotten behind that. And they tried to introduce too many new characters, even though it was the end of the saga. They just did some really heavy retcons, and I really wasn't a fan of that. So here's the continuation of the Spaceball articles. They got like some statuettes here of R2-D2 and C-3PO. Okay, these are like for, you know, fan film awards. They were talking about that earlier in here. So this is like, I guess, the award statuettes they use. More of a continuation here of the Spaceballs article. You got the character of Yogurt, who parodies Yoda, who's played by Mel Brooks himself. And you got Lone Star, the main hero, who was played by Bill Pullman. What about The Force Awakens? I like The Force Awakens. I did think it was a little too close to A New Hope in a lot of ways, but it did revive the Star Wars brand, and it did it pretty well for the most part. I just wish it wasn't so similar to A New Hope. Yeah, Bill Pullman played Lone Star. That character was sort of like a mashup between Luke and Han. Then you have Pizza the Hutt, the gangster there. Obviously a parody of Jabba the Hutt and the Pizza Hut food franchise. For the last time, no episodes 7 through 9. So, of course, that's been proven completely false. What about The Last Jedi? People tend to rip on The Last Jedi, but that's by far my favorite film in the sequel trilogy, because it's the only one that was actually willing to take risks and try new things. And I think all of the character development in that movie actually does make sense. There's a lot of people that would beg to differ and disagree with me there, but I personally like the direction that Rian Johnson went in. And I wish he'd been allowed to be the one in charge of Episode 9. I think it would have ended the franchise on a better note. So right here, obviously says no episodes 7 through 9. That's been proven false with Disney's acquisition of the series. They got to look at some of the Clone Wars stuff here. The older Genndy Tartakovsky 2D Clone Wars series. Got to look at that show's version of Qui-Gon Jinn seen in sort of a vision or flashback. Some fake rumors going around. Apparently there were fake scripts going around for Episode 9, a holiday special sequels, and something called Boba's Dog Speaks. And then they're talking about, you know, people, how they can understand R2-D2. Here they have a look at some of the Rebel pilots. Apparently someone was having an argument about whether it was Wedge Antilles that found Luke and Han when they were stranded out on Hoth. But that was actually a separate character named Zev Seneska, and they clear that up here. What about Solo? I thought Solo was okay. I mean, it felt like they were checking off the boxes of Han's backstory, but it's certainly not a bad film. I'd say that's about middle of the road as far as Star Wars goes. See, got a picture here of Rogue 3, Wedge Antilles, and then you have a picture here of Rogue 2, Zev Seneska. It's easy to confuse the characters. They do kind of look alike. And down there you've got Red 6 from the Battle of Yavin, Porkins, who of course was killed in that battle. William Hootkins, who was in this movie as Porkins, would later appear as a character appropriately named Major Eaton in Indiana Jones, and then he played the corrupt cop Eckhart in the 1989 Batman film. And I may have mentioned this before, but Wedge Antilles was portrayed by Dennis Lawson. He's the uncle of Ewan McGregor, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel series. Scumming the Galaxy one toy at a time. This is just talking about toy collecting, whether toys will go up in value. It looks like some kids put together a bunch of Trooper toys and made their own version of Order 66. I kind of like the way that looks. Kind of reminds me when people send in like pictures of their collectibles and stuff to Nintendo Power back in the day. Okay, I'm just taking a look now. There's a list of Hallmark Christmas ornaments that have come out for the Star Wars franchise. They've got the, looks like the early bird empty box thing here from back in the day. And I believe that's a That might be a Star Wars tie right there. I used to have a tie that had Yoda on it back in the day. When the original Star Wars came out, they weren't able to mass produce toys, so they actually sold empty boxes that included a voucher you could send in to have the toys mailed to you. So, just goes to show how crazy things got with Star Wars fandom not long after that. Yeah, cool Trooper, the Star Wars art of Nathan Cabrera. And here's like art he did of a female stormtrooper. That's kind of interesting. Here's some Tusken Raiders, Sand People. Star Wars Goes to School, 1978 educational film strip. Visit to Rancho Obi-Wan, that of course being the place with all the big collectibles and stuff. They actually go there, and my buddy Rob McCallum, who's a documentary filmmaker, they did some like toy hunt thing, and they went to Rancho Obi-Wan at one point, and that was pretty cool. And here they're talking about, there's a film director named Ken Anakin, spelled with 2 N's in the middle, and supposedly that's where the name Anakin Skywalker came from. That's a picture of him. He was 92 at the time this picture was taken. He's probably passed on since then, because if he was still alive, obviously he'd be over 100 years old. Here you got some, concept art, some Ralph McQuarrie stuff, the guy who did like all the classic concept art. Bantha Tracks. This looks like sort of a fandom special here. A lot of people, once again, sending in their pictures. People sending in some envelope art, and then some other pictures of, random, kids who are fans and, cosplayers. Bantha Tracks Art Gallery. Got some, more stuff here. Here's an ad for the Star Wars figure. Debbie said hello. Okay, well, tell Debbie I said hello back. Here you have the ad for the Hyperspace, which is the fan club you had to be in to get the magazine. Or you can just buy it at the newsstand, which is what I did. They got an ad for a Boba Fett watch on this page. And then you get the collector's picks section. They got a Lego set there of Jabba's sail barge. That actually looks pretty cool. And they put out that Jabba's barge toy that I guess was a pretty limited edition collector's item. They call the barge the Katana on that particular set. I don't know if that name really extends to anything else in the universe. Even here they just call it Jabba's sail barge. Here they've got like a Star Wars iPod cover, some pet costumes. They've got the unaltered trilogy DVDs, which of course were non-anamorphic and had really bad picture quality, but it is still, I guess, the only official release on DVD of those versions of the films. Supposedly there's a lot of fan edits and stuff. I might have to look into those. More stuff on this side as far as merch goes. And it looks like they got some figures of the Emperor's Royal Guards, like unmaskable versions, presumably from the old expanded universe. Those are cool. And on the back, we got that miniatures ad. I already showed that off. So that's the end of this issue of Star Wars Insider. Again, this is the last copy of the magazine that I own, so next week we're going to mix things up a bit. We're going to do a Game Informer magazine instead. So I haven't even opened up this magazine since I got it way back in the day. I think this is the thing you got if you were a GameStop member back then. And that magazine might still exist. It might be digital only. I'm not totally sure. So, anyway, we've arrived at the end of the video. Are there any parting shots, anything anyone wants to say before the video's over? It looks like I got maybe 2 people logged in right now. I do want to give a great big thank you to anyone who tuned in, any help or exposure I can get, anyone who watches these, subscribes to my channel. My thanks to you as always. Any last-minute comments, questions, concerns, etc.? Okay, it's pretty quiet on that end, so I'm actually going to end the live stream at this time. Thanks again for those of you that tuned in. Again, please give this a like if you were a fan. Please subscribe to my channel if you're a fan of what I see here. I do a lot of, unboxings and reviews, mainly for movies. So I'm always keeping busy on this channel. New content's always trying to go up, and I'm always trying to do live streams as well to try to add a little more traffic to the channel and a little more variety. Anyway, this has been Taylor T. Carlson. Thanks again if you logged in and watched this video. I'll see you next weekend.